we think privacy is not just a term, it is going to become a de facto way of thinking.
We are here with Mandar, and a lot of people are like, who's Mandar? Who's this person? Why is this important? What's going on? So, as you guys know, John and I use a lot of strategies surrounding server-side tracking, and there's a lot of server-side tracking tools out there. And one of the ones that we found the most success with is Blotout. And obviously, with all the changes coming into play, like iOS 16, and just essentially cookie blockers, just the way that data is fed into businesses is becoming more and more important. And it's also giving you an edge in the marketing space, just because if you think about it, it's a lot based on the algorithm. And if you're feeding the algorithm what you want, then you're going to have an advantage on targeting users better than your competitor. And most businesses now are, obviously using Google Ads and Meta Ads. And so the importance of data is, exponential and can completely, I would say this is like an SOP now for the majority of our strategies. And it opens up a lot more strategies as well, too. So before I kind of go into, the specifics of like how we use it in marketing, I want to ask Mandar, I guess, a couple questions, maybe introduce yourself on, why you started Blotout and sort of what the purpose of Blotout is. And then maybe we can kind of go and see some more inner workings of it.
So I'll give you my background. I'm an engineer by trade. Our entire company is mostly engineering, which is great and can become a problem for marketers. But my background is I'm a network engineer by trade. I went through cycles. I'm 29th year of my career. Happy because I only work for startups, which makes it easy. And then Blotout fundamentally is an amalgamation of our experiences as engineers who actually come from the tech world of ad tech, not the selling side of media. And then fundamentally, the last gig, the founders of the company come from a company called Brave Browser, which is the privacy side of advertising. And so kind of gives us the full spectrum of, hey, we built tech before Facebook was born. Like a lot of my patents in ad tech are actually before Facebook was Facebook, which is interesting in its own curve. And then that mathematics has not changed in terms of how advertising works. Of course, machines have gotten powerful over a period of time, but you take that with understanding why privacy matters and why when we have kids they shouldn't have barcodes starts to add up. So the genesis of the company is actually coming out of Brave saying we think privacy is not just a term, it is going to become a de facto way of thinking. And even though people don't believe that it has made a change, it has in terms of how data gets managed. But the more important thing is advertising is not going anywhere. And you take those two and you say, oh, hang on, there's an opportunity here. If the light of the privacy fire is going to get lit, we call it like the 3-day in the 10-day journey, like day 3 in the 10-day journey. That's how the Blotout journey started. A couple of people at Brave came and said, okay, let's go. A lot of my friends from my last decade of experience said, let's go. Came together, started building it. We were wrong a couple times. And then
That's how it always goes.
Third time around, we're like, I think we get what the marketer wants, and it's not a whole bunch of engineering. It's just make it work in Google, make it work somewhere else, make it work in Klaviyo, and then here we go, right? And I think in 4 years, we went from no customers to more than about 3,000 sites now run.
Yeah, well, I think it comes down to like you were saying, the privacy side of things and how data is not necessarily captured inside of Google and Meta as it was pre iOS 14. So, ever since 2020, things have been just getting crazier and crazier on the data side. And it's been less about actually capturing the data and more about modeling the data from an algorithms perspective on both Facebook and Google. And so it's been one of those things to where, we've ran into issues, and this is kind of, the gap of what you're actually getting versus what the ads are saying. That gap has just gotten larger and larger, which has kind of led us into the position for your company specifically on how we can actually capture that data and sort of go back to pre-iOS and back to the days where, you can actually see more of what's going on inside of your business. And, I think that we're at a point now where most people are online, right? Like most businesses are growing online or they have some sort of presence. If you don't have presence online, then you're not going to grow your business. I mean, it's just that simple. Most people are going online. It's getting bigger and bigger. Only those super niche brands that, have to be in person are really the only ones that, have their locked in niche. So with Blotout in mind, so for your average marketer, they don't really know too much about, all the inner workings of how, systems work in terms of attribution. And so that's what we try to teach, is trying to figure out how to attribute and figure out where to push on, whether it's Google this campaign or Facebook this campaign. And so a lot of our strategies are geared around that. understanding. And so for someone that doesn't know too much about Blotout, the way that I understand it, and correct me if I'm wrong, is it's essentially a way to string together data more accurately on the back end of your business to then feed the algorithms more information. It's server-side tracking for those of you out there that use that. However, it's not your standard, and I don't want to say the brand's name, but a very popular server-side tracking tool. It's not the same. And so I think it'd be good to kind of get a good understanding of sort of your differentiator between the standard
and
server
I
side.
think that makes sense. So I think let's talk about some history because it's important to understand that. Right now, remember, until 2019, to your point, 2020 is the big shift. All the data was collected, not sent, because people don't realize the browser actually carries all of our identities. Right, and even those identities are mapped on some random SaaS cloud, whether it's GA4, well, back in the day UA, right, or Klaviyo, those identities were there, and there were two kinds: one that could be tracked across domains, third-party cookie, and the ones that were tracked on the first-party domain, saying I can only track, like, johnmoran.com, just for the sake of that, right? Like, but you know what I mean by that. And so, as the world moved forward with no third-party cookies, you have to ask the question, saying, do we even need tags? Because if they can't collect an ID beyond 7 days, which is what iOS 14.5 did, by then 60% of the browsers, people don't even realize that every browser on iOS is affected. There's this Chrome is gonna make, nobody cares. Like, the most important part of Chrome, which runs on Apple, is already impacted, right? And so from that perspective, you ought to say, why am I firing 40 random tags that don't carry identity to 40 SaaS companies? Other than letting them fingerprint it, which is, by the way, becoming more and more illegal. And so we call this phenomenon the inversion of the stack, right? And what we are saying is, would you have 40 such stacks, or would you have one that powers them? So if you look at the shift that Apple created by thinking like that, is you had 40 fragmented identity systems. Now you're forced to have one, right? And so the company, maybe two, like depending on how the merchants think or how technically sophisticated they are. But you ought to ask, saying, we've already gone through this for 20 years where we never had any control of our data. Does it make sense? And so what server-side tagging does is actually two components. There is tagging, because I still need to know what you did on my site. And then identity, which is a CDP function, to say, but did I actually, do I know who you are as I kind of look at the tracking? And so those two pieces need to come in. And to the company, like Lord Voldemort, you don't want to call their name, that company is actually built on GTM, right? So we only have 3 or 4 competitors in the world. Google Tag Manager, is there 100 companies built on Google Tag Manager, Kate, not 1 or 2? You live in the world of Shopify, which is limited. I don't. The other worlds, those guys don't exist. But there's about 100 companies using GTM. You should also know that there are companies building on top of Blotout. Makes sense, right? For the guys who don't want to go the Google way. And so what we are saying is, to your point, it's an SOP. Everybody needs to do it. Otherwise, the gap between data. But the point I think that gets missed is there are 2 data sets. The CDPs of the world never had to collect zero-party data. Facebook Click ID, Google Click ID, TikTok Click ID, WBraids. It's completely lost. And so all of the guys who are using the old CDP stacks are actually not getting click attributed really well.
Yeah, it's more modeled versus actual data.
That is correct. And so you now have to collect it. And then remember, Facebook works a little bit differently than Google. Facebook says, send me both, deduplicate it. Google sends, well, if you send me both, I don't know how to deduplicate it, so I'm going to double count it. So you got to choose one versus the other. So all of these are layers of services, right? Which is 1%, 2% differential over, I just have a longer lived ID. That's called the genesis of the problem solve. But then how you build your models on top of that identity graph is the differentiator. Right? So, and that's what we focus as engineers on, is saying, if I had to send data to Meta, what would I do? How far can I stretch it? Things like that.
Gotcha. So if I'm putting this in less technical terms, is you have a platform that, you have Google ads and you have Meta ads on. They're going to your website, and you have multiple different tags that are feeding different data back to each one for modeling.
Correct.
Blotout is just making it centered in one place and having more accurate data fed back to each individual campaign, so it doesn't have to model the data, or it can model the data better in terms of the actual user, not necessarily just estimating if the sale occurred or not.
That's correct. And I think the next level to this, Kaden, which you've seen some of it, is called purpose-based modeling. New customer, returning customer. What do they take? How far can you stretch it? Because like what we are saying is, now In the old days, we discussed this, data was collected, the models were built at Meta's end. In the new world, which is scary for them, by the way, to some extent, if people don't know how to send good data, you can taint your account very, very quickly, right? And in the recent days, I was just talking to you about this week, we're seeing a lot of bot attacks. People don't realize that's a lot of negative signal back to the pixel, because the
I actually
pixel
have a question on that, but
yeah.
I think we'll get back to that.
Okay, let's get back to that, but I'll let you continue. So it's not just about collection and just dumping it. How good is the data? Do you want to remove pieces of it? What is good data being sent? Do you want to model it? All of those are parts of that one structure. Biggest difference between us and everybody else, we're a done for you service. We don't want you to fret over knowing all these things. We'll just get it done.
And that's nice. Can't argue with that. I think the biggest thing is like, because as marketers, and this is how I felt early on, where it's like, okay, now I got to keep up with all the privacy laws coming into play. And like, ever since 2020, it's like, now do I use attribution software? Is this going to be something that's going to be up to date? Like, how do I know it's up to date? I have to keep track of what the correlations are. And there's a lot more, I guess, tech involved, at least has been for the last like 5 years now, for marketers, because you're just kind of forced in that direction of, which attribution software tool do I use to then leverage to, make better choices for the business. And essentially what we found is that it's all kind of BS, and it's not really, the best way to look at things. And so I think one thing that would be important is, what have you seen from a client that's sort of like the before they get blot out and then after they get blot out? What has been kind of the things that they tell you? What are the things that you see? What's sort of a lift, I guess, that tends to happen?
So I think there are phases to the game. So I'll start with how we started the company so you understand it, right? So when we started the company, we saw there was a clear lack of understanding for why you needed this, including for the one company you kind of kept calling out. We sort of bought that wisdom to say, understand the delta is not infinite, right? But the delta is 20%, and that 20% matters a lot. So in the first phase of our game, we actually taught the industry what EMQ scores are and why do they matter. Even now, they're of course getting used as negative signals where people will just hack their way to get a number. But at the underlying stack, it's still not working. And so the number one thing we say is, in our philosophy, the one thing we measure with every brand we work on, can I scale you if your CAC stays constant? And so I debate with the Cadence of the world and the Johns and I debated a lot, by the way, is the focus is not on CAC and LTV, which is really what the attribution peddlers kind of want to push. And they are important numbers, but if you ask any brand, if I can keep my CAC constant, would they triple the spend? And you would get the same answer 100% of the time. So we at Blotout actually spend more time, you take the two classics, the ruggables, is to say, what is stopping you from scaling? Let's work on that in the model rather than just worry about scores and audience lift. But that's the second phase. So at the first phase, we touched the industry saying, understand what an EMQ is or an events API is, because TikTok and Meta are struggling to understand what your traffic is. If you can match more, your bid pool goes bigger. And so our focus at Blotout remains saying, can I make your bid pool bigger? Because that's the only thing that keeps your CAC down.
Yeah, more signals is obviously better for the algorithm.
There you go. And so
going from 30 to 40 would be a big change, month over month.
That's our measurement metric, right? Is can you scale up? And we typically don't kind of get into LTV CAC ROAS because the brand drives LTV, not us. What we are saying is, does it make sense to suppress it? Does it make sense to do this? Things like that, right? And so that's fundamentally where we kind of sit in the industry. Is our measurement metrics are more like, am I helping you scale the business?
Gotcha. So could you give, I guess, a little bit more insight on like how you capture the data and sort of what that looks like?
Okay. So the first piece of our data stack, which gets ignored a lot, is people don't realize that removing garbage from your pixel is actually a good thing, right? And this is like, because look, you don't know when you add robots or text, which people are like, open it up. OpenAI is gonna go put a llama inside so that I'm like, sure, but what about others who got access to? And so the idea is you don't realize that that's actually happening with your business all the time, right? And so the first piece we do is, and one of the reasons we are a little bit more expensive than everybody else in the world is people don't realize that even if you're a $50 customer per month with us, right? People don't realize they're getting probably the world's most modern stack for that price without having to write one line of code. And so if you look at it, what we're doing is we are doing attack analysis for you every day. Keep it clean. We're doing bot analysis for you. You can see our friends are getting attacked every day, but their pixels don't see it.
Yeah, which then
right?
pushes the algorithm away from going after those users. Yeah,
That matters the most, right? Be human by human. And so people think we don't do that. At times you get scrutinized saying, your number of events are less than Shopify's. I'm like, yep, we're cleaning them up.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's the number one value prop. And at times people don't see a change, kind of life goes on. Second, people don't realize people call us trackers. We're not trackers. Tracking is a very baseline functionality for you guys on Shopify. Shopify actually does all the tracking work.
Yeah.
Right. But what we are doing is we're rebuilding identity. I talked to you about 4 kinds, right? This is first party data, which is what CDPs have done for a while. Our large customers actually have started caring about this. We actually do free consent audits for our customers now. This matters more than once you get past 50 million, this starts to matter. At 500 million, it absolutely matters. You're getting sued a lot.
Yeah.
This is the thing that matters actually to you, John, and everybody else, which is the first customer acquisition. Till I have this, I actually don't know who the customer is.
Yeah.
It is Facebook click ID, Google click ID, TikTok click ID, Facebook cookie, things like that. We actually build our own models on top of this data.
Gotcha.
This is actually what's stitching them. See the user ID? So for every browser that our brand sees, we keep signals for life.
That's a big factor with that, because a lot of these tools need to like warm up and understand what's going on. Whereas, and it, data fatigues after 7 days in Meta in terms of the attribution window, or 90 days in Google. So we're talking, customers that are there like 5 years ago will be able to.
That's my point, right? And so the CDPs were never built to deal with this, because the tags that got fired dealt with cookies, and the cookies kept all this data. That's a pretty large missing piece, right? Even with GTM stack, so the client doesn't talk to the server. Ours, I believe, is the only stack where you can write data from the client, and we can now write learning models back into the same database through our server. And that's what allows us to build very, very clean models. And again, the business is not about, I'm going to give you a 50% swing. That's what PowerPoints say. PowerPoints are not good for business, right? Like, what do you have to say? Can I give
they
a 2%
sell a lot, but that's
you build a business 2% at a time. You do 4 right things, you got an 8% lift. That's a lot for a business. Then for all of the broken things like amplitude, mix panel, we actually fix their cookies on the fly. We can't manipulate cookies, but at the back end, we stitch an identifier that fixes their stack, right? And then this is our new play, where I have a use case with one of the largest discounted, I wouldn't say discounted, but largest packaged t-shirt company. You know who they are. For them, they're like, hey, we only focus on first time buyer, because we know our buyer they love the t-shirts and we are selling at a price people buy again and again. They wanted data, all of the model data on the site in less than 50 milliseconds. So we now are the first company that makes it available in 50 milliseconds. Jeez. So now you can segment data, you can do all of that. And so one of the beautiful things with cookie loss, instead of 40 broken stacks, you have one simple stack with all of the data available to you. You cannot just fix your meta, you can fix your site. You cannot just fix Google, we can fix attribution, because it's the same data that is getting modeled everywhere.
So I guess a question on that as well, since it's kind of all simplified down in like you said, one stack. Have you seen a lot of improvement on site speed as well too?
So now imagine if you have a really good server-side stack, which is tagless, we don't need to fire any pixels client-side. So for certain customers, we have saved them for perpetuity of SIPA, because lawyers actually don't know how any of the tech works, right? And so we look at consent, which is something we have followed, but we make sure consent was available before we even fire a server-side tag.
Gotcha.
So one use case, big money use case. Second use case, our entire payload is 2 kilobytes, right? And we are the only company, I believe, I could be wrong, but I can show it to you. Let's take this particular customer, which is our friend. Hopefully he won't kill me. He won't.
We can blur it out if we need to.
Yeah, you actually control the pixels. So you can just say, I don't want to load it. We won't load it. So now you can stop loading pixels, right? Or you can say, load it for me and we will runtime load it. But if we didn't get fired, your site is very, very fast, right? And we will only fire it when the tag gets fired, so that you're not pulling more and more network data. Like a simple GTM tag is 0.5 megabyte or 500 kilobytes. We are 2 kilobytes.
Yeah.
Huge difference, right? Because at the end of the day, our philosophy is write once, use it everywhere. We are tagless. Tag managers keep firing those tags for every single provider. Massive difference in terms of productivity.
Yeah. No, it makes sense. Because you're firing
hopefully makes
tags.
Sense. And then the third thing is essentially your analytics, right? So If you go and say everything in our world is real time, we're not shy telling when an API fails. They fail all the time. You should just know that's how software works. Your browser doesn't load 100% of the time accurately. Sadly, all APIs work like that. But when data comes in, you can essentially see that we are manifesting the data back into the stream, right? And so as data comes back into the stream, we're just saying, did we do this? Did we do that? Like automatically. I wish I was an admin. Like I think I'm on their side.
All good. I will,
but hopefully gives you a sense of the logic for how the system works, and everything in Blotout is real time.
And just to clarify as well to everyone watching that
same customer. I'll do it at the admin level.
What is being shown as well, it's not an attribution, like it's not like that.
Like when I show you the restitching of the data, all of the data from an audience perspective is very, very secure. Okay, let me stop. They actually loaded it. So now you can see this is one of our core value props, right?
Yeah.
It's not just about data, it's about how you write it, what's going on. So in Meta's world, you fire a client, you fire a server, deduplicate it. In Google's world, Google will actually over attribute client side because they like, we call it, everybody works for Google, not with Google. They would like their tag everywhere. But ad blockers block Google tags. We're the only company that fires a Google tag with all the right data if it's consented. But we will actually deduplicate it and fire it server side if it's not. So if some happens, which is 9%. So now you get a 9% lift in data even before you got started. That's 9% in attribution. That's 9% better in matching, 9% in better lookalikes. Simple stuff, 9% right?
In growth, right? When you, exactly. Yeah. And I think when it comes down to, Blotout and how it's layered in, like you said, number one, speed obviously increased, and then just because you're firing less tags. But then on top of that, you have, a system that's built that is getting 9%, let's say roughly, it depends on the business, but 9% more data. And on top of that too, I think one thing that people are starting to realize is that bots are going to become more and more and more prominent as it reaches across just the entire market with AI. I can build a bot and I don't know, Python. So it's going to be something to where, segmenting the data is going to be more and more important. And so I think the investment is definitely worth it from at least the perspective that I'm seeing. The biggest thing though, and this is sort of, clients are gonna look at this and say, well, how is this gonna make me more money? What can I do? Can I get around this? Like what's ways around? And really there isn't. It's not really something that's been pushed right now to say, okay, let's remove, like Clixies, for example, doesn't necessarily remove the bots. It removes it after it's already been sent and it blocks the IP. It could just switch through a VPN. So it's kind of a reactive approach versus a proactive approach. And if you're looking at it from a reactive angle, pushing data into an algorithm, it's still going to have that data and it's still going to go after those users. So the issue with that is that even though the IP might be blocked, the signal of a bot showing interest on the site with Clixies is going to, it's not really going to solve the problem. But with this, you're removing it before it even hits the site, before the tags even fire, so the algorithm doesn't even know. Like it doesn't even see the data whatsoever.
That's the idea. I mean, the most common things we remove automatically, and then there are levels to the game.
Yeah.
So in the last 3 months, I think we have seen more attacks, more aggressive than just single IP or automated bots. We are seeing distributed attacks, and so we don't know what their purpose is. In one case, we do. I can't share who they are, but in most cases, people are like, I don't know why. I'm not even like a $10 million GMV brand. I don't know what's going on. And so we've had to kind of raise the bar and go from baseline bot protection to level 2, level 3. Now, in some cases, we are level 28, right? In some cases, we have taken entire countries out of the game to say, remove their servers from play. Let that cost them more money. So it depends. Like it's not a straight line, but at a baseline, all automated stuff is gone.
Gotcha. So it's like, I mean, really what comes down to is the marketers, what's driving the actual interest, that's driving the traffic, and you're just filtering all the traffic for the marketer and the actual business, which is the data stream. And people don't realize that like that data stream is literally like the life of your business when it comes to like marketing. So like, and just to give people some context to that, like if you're, let's say, a local business, and by the way, this is for e-com and lead gen, so this is everyone. If you're a small business and you have a competitor right next to you that sells the exact same service, the exact same industry, the exact same pricing, let's just say the differentiators are very minimal, right? And it's more so maybe a better customer service, but people don't really know that until they've actually worked with you, kind of thing. And so you might say, okay, we're running ads and someone else is then they're running the same ads as us. you can have a huge advantage with just like a 9% or even just like a 3% swing in data that will pass them up because the algorithm will be able to match people before they'll be able to match.
That's the idea. That's the idea. Because we don't know how Meta and Google work. The only thing we know is better quality data, more absolute data, remove the cleanliness. They would do some of it, but now we are sending it, so we need to clean it, right? And so, like I said, there's no big swings. Once people know what is the core of things, when we came in, people didn't, now they do. Like the idea is to say, how do I create 2%, 3%, 4% differentials, right? But the people who work best with us, there is a reason why we have so many large customers in 2 years, is they understand the value of 2% and how to latch onto it. Or, level 1 is identity, level 2 is cleanliness, level 3 is how we do it. Done for you. Level 4 is segmentation. One of the things that is not understood in the world, like, 2 years back, this gentleman was a very bright chap, like, James at a company called Abertly, and shout out to him. He kept challenging us saying, well, why can't I optimize just for a new customer? Why am I suppressing? And then the light bulbs for engineers went on. I'm like, yeah, he's right. Like, all the bidding is real time. So why the hell are we using segments?
Yeah.
Which are by nature old. They get old. You segment once in a day. And so we started looking into it. We found a custom conversion that Meta has allowed for life, right? And then Purchase NC came to birth 2 years back. And then, of course, everybody followed. But the idea was, when Purchase NC came, we were like, well, hang on. So if a product in your warehouse is not selling, can I just ask Meta, say, focus on that? I need it sold. I'd rather spend more money on Meta than discount it, because once it's discounted, it's done. And then the last 2 years of our life have been spent on segmenting pixels.
Yeah.
Because you can.
Well, and it works. Like, that's kind of the whole baseline, and just to give people context if they're newer. So some people might be here because of the feeder strategy. Some people might be here because of John and the strategies that are in our school community. And so there's sort of layers to what we're trying to do in the algorithm. So like the strategies that we're pushing out are both a way to sort of stitch together and push people into or push accounts in the direction that we want them to go, more towards new customers, just to kind of play the algorithm game. But then the layer on top of that is if we can use Blotout, or when, like I said, the ability to actually target new customers right away, or first click new customers, that opens up a whole new method of strategy that goes beyond just like the feeder. And this is something that, we're doing tests now, but just to give some people context. So like Performance Max is geared towards it's going to scoop up whatever. It's going to go after repeat customers, and that's been just the nature of it, especially for running omnichannel. But if, for example, you're using Blotout and you have a new customer as the target, and this is still in testing, but we want to see if this is going to allow us to then open up Performance Max as an engine that we could use for new customer acquisition. So there's a lot more that comes into play whenever you can segment the data and it's clean data at the same time. Because, like I said, instead of fighting the algorithm, we're able to fuel it in the right direction.
100%. I think John, with one of our customers, I don't know if the three of us share it, but he's taken one customer again in the pet business where they had 3 products and their pixel. And remember, this is important, right? Their pixel was just stuck with the first product and just could not learn into the new product because all the audiences were known for the first one.
Yeah.
So we actually created 3 holdout conversions, and actually with the holdout started pumping a lot of dollars to say
different products into
different audiences, and the creatives were driving people back to the collections for these new products.
Yeah.
3 separate. You should now know Meta has already created an ASC product with different ad sets that automatically run holdouts for you.
Gotcha.
And so one of the things that we are all talking about that is now getting manifested into the engines is the engines are realizing that as a brand grows, they don't get stuck in a single audience level.
Yeah.
They are building their stories like, hey, I was at baseline, I'm now on first story, second story. But at times there are differences in audiences. And the best way you can do yourself, kind of get help, build the audience level, clean your data, start segmenting those audiences. They used to be done through CDPs, but remember, you're buying real time. So now you can just point Meta to a direction. Meta goes fast. Google goes fast. We're starting to see that adoption even at the engine level.
So the biggest thing here for people to understand then from that is that before you would build audiences inside of Meta, like manual audiences, like groups of people. With the data that's being pumped in through Blotout, you're creating specific conversion actions that are geared towards certain products, and those are creating the audiences from it, not necessarily you, the individual. And so this is extremely important because with the Meta Andromeda update, it's been less about, it's shifting away, or it already has shifted away from groups of people to specific individuals. And so what that means is that an extra data layer on top of that in real time can better target individuals versus like you going for a group of people for a creative that works somewhat for, let's say 70% efficiency, just making up numbers here, for a group of people. Whereas now with Andromeda, you have a creative that might work 100% for this person and then like 0% for this person.
Right.
But you can measure that as well by not forcing Andromeda to say, okay, this is like someone that's that we know is showing the exact same signals as this person. Now we're segmenting also by the product itself. So there's another layer on top of that for how you can say this person wants this specific product right now, real time, and we don't have to go for audience groups per se. Way more personalized. So I see Blotout as kind of a layer on, like you said, what Meta's already trying to do, trying to be more personalized. And then Blotout is just, another way to feed it even more via, like you just said, the conversion actions. So, I mean, and this is, like I said, these are large companies and small companies. Like it's not just something that only large publicly traded companies are doing.
We have to do it, right? I mean, one of the biggest advantages for the younger companies who are a little bit more hasty, I would say, than a little bit more mature companies is there's a lack of understanding for some of this. And people call it we call it the Harry Potter problem, where people just say, magic. Well, there is no magic, right? It's all about how you do things at 2% layers, 3% layers. But the biggest advantage they have is infrastructure is becoming so easy to build that they almost have the most cutting edge, tech stack in the world for peanuts to the dollar. I mean, we're making the stack I just showed you, including everything vertical, available for $50 a month for the small guy.
Yeah.
Which is insanity. Like that's what it costs to talk to somebody for an hour these days, right? Like, and so it's interesting that there's a lack of understanding, but you're right. Like I think the machines at the other end are going to force people to say, the more one-on-one data you send that is more accurate, the more we can do for you.
Yeah. I mean, I'm having a very similar problem in a different way, though. It's you get to the point where you're so far ahead that you can't relate to the initial audience that you want to serve in the first place. Like we're still on the realm of ROAS, and people are still coming to us saying, can you give me a good ROAS? Like, wait. Like, you want brand ROAS or do you want new customer ROAS? Right. And then even then, you don't even know, because like we're talking now, the data is not necessarily as accurate as you think it is. So there's so much that's not discussed on just your average, marketer. And I think that, if you're watching this, number one, like you're way ahead of the game when it comes to this, but this is the future, and it's being proven on this page again and again. So
everything's real time is our feeling right now. Is there's no reason for side buyer warehouses. There's no reason, right? Because one of the things is, in the businesses we are in, not every business is in the same pace. 90 to 95% of all it is digital front end website, right? And the cookie problem is smack in the middle. The privacy problem is smack in the middle. The consent issues are smack in the middle. And so if you can find a path to resolve those and sort of make it work, there is so much you can do, right? But it still requires a Caden and a John and people like you to say, well, how do I translate that into revenue at the back end? That's not our role in the ecosystem. Our role is saying, I can bet you top dollar we can track really better than everybody else, right? And people have this notion of track, but track is not like event tracking, it's audience tracking.
Yeah.
And that's really the value chain that we want to create, moving forward.
Yeah, well, and just to put some marketing to it as well, like if someone's buying a, hotel and it's by the beach, and let's say they're going in like a month, like you want to target people, you want to be able to have that data to then target them for like upselling them something like, swimwear or like sunscreen or some kind of product that's related to what they just bought. Because once they go, they might not be in that group anymore interested in that product. So there's so many layers to this that I don't want to go too deep on it. But I guess let's kind of zoom out a little bit to the general market. So a lot of people, and there's, a lot of buzz between all these really popular tools. Triple Whale, I hear this all the time. People using Triple Whale, High ROAS, Northbeam, all these other tools. Now, as a marketer, I'm actually moving away from these tools because it's more so modeling. It's not just the raw data. And, obviously we're never going to have impression data, but that's okay. Modeling data, though, is I find more so confusing because you're layering modeling data on top of modeling data. and you're not really pumping information to the algorithm, especially not proper information.
Yeah.
And you're paying a lot of money for the software. I'm just on these brands. But I think one of the biggest things is it does oversimplify it to a fault. And so what has been kind of your experience with, like what's the difference with like Blotout and these third-party tools? Like why is Blotout, more important important in your eyes versus these third-party tools?
Well, it's not about important or less important. I think it's a philosophical debate, right? Like, so remember, we come from a privacy browser company. Like, you look at SaaS companies versus people like, we believe that the future of every company is how well does your founder CEO actually know the business, right? It's called game theory, right? Like, you know how the Rubik's Cube game theory, like I know my endpoint, I'm just going to get there faster.
Yeah.
And so we look at ourselves as an infra company. We are, in fact, like even our peanut customer who's free for the first month is all on single tenant infrastructure. Sooner or later, that problem is going to exacerbate everybody else. Like I can tell you today, a lot of the companies you mentioned actually don't look for consent, but are happy to send data from their warehouse.
Yeah.
So everybody who's using those products is non-compliant from day one until somebody finds out. When they find out, kitchen sink.
Lawyers.
Yes. And so that's one. Two is one of the things we know is why do we run a browser pixel? Why do we run all of these things? Why does Meta force us to? Meta does things on its own that we don't. And so pure server-side measurement is not good enough. You have to pair it, right? Unless you're in a compliance like HIPAA. All right, it's good to get the 10% benefit, but let's not lose our lives doing it, right? Because when you track data from your site, people might collect PHI along the way. But in general, the best stacks do both because we don't know what Google is doing and we don't know what Meta is doing. And they have been our growth channels for so long. We need to trust them that they're doing their job. And there must be a reason why they're saying run a browser pixel.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's the second big differentiation. In an infra company, you can upload, run, drive, all of it. Right. GTM does a pretty decent job at this. So do we. We are seeing companies who are trying to enter the space as pure server side. It doesn't work. Remember, if Meta says, if you were at the Performance Meta Summit, for the first 3 whole sessions, it's like, you have to run the browser pixel and you have to run the server side pixel, right? There's a reason why they say that. Third is, like, look, data in real time matters. The pixel was always meant to be for real time. The signals were meant to be sent real time. We believe in that. And that will remain one of the largest philosophical deltas between us and somebody else. Because when we looked at the game theory, that's the one thing the Apples and the Googles can't take away from us.
Yeah.
Time. And so you take all of those, our philosophies, look, we're building infrastructure because you, let's say, Kevin at InnoSubs, you can ask us to make changes to your infrastructure and we'll make them without affecting the rest of the SaaS companies in my stack.
Yeah.
Right? Because
it's the one core, starting point for everything.
As the journey goes forward in the privacy world, we're in the privacy decade, we expect those changes to come and hurt us. To your question about data accuracy, look, tracking accuracy has gotten better and better. Like most of our customers are on Shopify. If you take direct meds, the amount of people who can make direct meds work is small. Salesforce is very hard. And you're right about modeling, right? We believe that if the right data is sent to the platforms, you're doing it. One of your last case studies on LinkedIn was about exactly that. They're not lying if you send it to them correctly.
Yeah.
They're just saying, if you don't send me the data correctly, I can only tell you what I can tell you. So
exactly.
If the modeling companies are pulling data from them, well, they're further downstream screwed because now you're taking all the incorrect attribution and modeling it back.
Yeah.
But, I don't blame the marketers, right? The marketers are saying, well, I don't have a tool that tells me how my cross-channel stuff is working. But we as a company don't believe in that. We as a company are saying, let's get the attribution done right in the marketing platforms. That's the best bet.
Yeah, completely agree. I think, and there was a really good metaphor where it's like with the attribution platforms, you're having the dog kind of pull you. I think John said this, but you're having the dog pull you and take you, and you're having to try to re-guide the dog as to where you want it to go. Whereas with this tool, it's you taking the dog with you because you already know where you need to go, and the algorithm is essentially you.
Exactly.
And so I think, I'm completely, I think just so everyone knows and they can take an actionable item from this, or at least an insight of what we're doing is, like we're using, for example, Blotout with sort of the baseline for both Meta and Google. And then we're using something like, Lifetimely or Store Hero, or even just like a spreadsheet to track what's going on in the business. And that's working out, and it's way cheaper than that of third-party tools. I know I'm crapping on them right now, but it's just really
I'm
like I'm
telling
just
you, in
giving you the
6 months,
facts.
you're gonna have your own Replit app where you and John are basically asking the models to be built on just pure data. We have a developer who's actually done that. If you want, I can make an intro. All he's done takes Blotout data, he's built a Replit app, and he's actually using simple llama to kind of isolate source, medium, like campaign, all of those things into a stack.
Yeah, I think you actually had a video with him earlier.
Oh, okay.
I'm trying to, yeah, I think, but yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah,
Yeah.
Wicked Reports. I'll just say, yeah, Wicked Reports is a really good third party tool that uses that. So I will say that is one of the good ones, but it's not necessarily as mainstream as all these other ones out there.
Yep.
I know we're kind of getting on top of the time. I think one last thing that we maybe can cover real fast is people that have potential issues with HIPAA. We know that the algorithm, that's in another layer of privacy. Is there any comments that you can give on that, on what you have seen with clients that are maybe more on like that side of the equation versus not? So that privacy is a big factor with that.
Yeah. So in HIPAA world, right? Like HIPAA is actually one of the first plays where you had to kind of understand what you were sending, because the companies who self-certify HIPAA, remember, they have to self-certify. It's a self-certified regulation. I can't believe until I got into it. When I went through it, I was like, wow. So I can come and claim anything I want. And we're seeing that with companies. They're just saying, well, I know I don't want to. Most companies are not, they don't like harakiri. They were not going to do something stupid to start with, right? But they came to be HIPAA. And so we just like, well, what's going on? And so there was a lot of misconception. One, remember, Meta, Google already have your data.
Yeah.
They just don't want data about your illnesses or your history in illnesses or what you're grabbing, because that inference is illegal today from a legality perspective. And what we are finding out is a lot of the HIPAA marketing vendors are coming and saying, well, we got you. It's a server-side stack. Almost all of them are GTM, by the way. Very few of them are non-GTM. And like we have replaced a couple of them both on the GTM side. And there is I'll share after this, there's a webinar that we did with Ageless RX. One of them was on GTM. Like they have been able to quadruple their spend in 6 months. And that's the delta
awesome.
between getting it right, where you can still remove the PHI, still give the signals back. Because remember, Facebook, Google, they're all audience lookalike models on the pixel. So far as you can give them the right data, you don't have to people think, oh, it's HIPAA, we can't really do marketing. That's actually a very wrong notion. Like in the new world where you send data, you can make allergies look like oranges. We do, by the way, in some cases.
That's a really good idea, though. Like same kind of data, but just segment it out differently. Yeah, right. That's a really good idea.
As APIs get built, we can do things that we couldn't do 5 years back only. But people are not applying themselves to say, is it possible? It is very possible. We're doing it. We launched our HIPAA product in December, I believe, give or take. And 18 customers are happily, and we are, I think, the fastest HIPAA deployment in the business. Completely single tenant, all on Cloudflare single tenants. We actually give a BA certificate of our own and Cloudflare's, and take 16 minutes for most customers to go live.
That's wild. I think I have one right now that we're trying to get on that as well too. But that's really good. That's funny. It's like you really like oranges, you really like apples. Like that's a really great idea for keeping privacy, at the forefront of it. So, but still leveraging marketing. So I love that analogy. I know we're getting on top of the time. So what would be, I guess, one of the things that you want to end here with on information about Blotout and maybe where to find you? We'll have some information in the description as well too. But yeah, let's kind of hear about just.
It's pretty simple, right? Most of our customers who stayed with us have stayed with us for two reasons. They look at us as the engineering bridge between actual engineering, which is Facebook, and marketing. And the customers actually ask questions and engage rather than just insinuate. They're the ones who stick, because remember, the company you work with is driving all of the signals for all of your marketing. If they don't know what they're doing and it's all PowerPoint, it's not going to work. Two, work and understand what your strategy is. Talk to your vendor, including at Blotout. We actually work with you to say, like, every product we have built in the last 2 years is customer driven, right? John was the first one to ask, doing that for Meta, can we do that for Google? We did it, and then it worked. And the platforms are realizing that as you send data, they have to find a path to let you kind of pinpoint to where you want to go. And so the power is in your hands, right? Find somebody who understands that, because once they understand that, they can really optimize your business to the next level.